And welcome to Steam to Live the Dream. And today we are talking about our final thoughts. What is on my mind in relation to our Are You Pregnant with Purpose series? First place that I want to go is we're just trying to gain that understanding of when you're in the place of pressing towards your purpose. And it's so interesting. I find it interesting how all things seem to line up in alignment when I do certain things. That even this is in alignment with what I was listening to this morning in the prayer call. That when we walk with God, logic is out the door. We can't logic our way into the things that we believe that we need to be doing in certain seasons. Logic would tell us there's a series of steps that we must take. Just take the steps and the thing will come out. But some seasons you will take the steps, you'll get to step 4 and get delayed. You'll get to step 7 and get delayed again. And you'll get frustrated because you're like, I'm taking the steps, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and things aren't moving. But there's a part of you that has to realize that in this moment, that the things that are coming against you in nature, you have to wait. It's a scripture that goes in the Bible that says, once you have done all to stand, just stand. The other day I was listening to one of the ministers I listened to, and she was making the point of saying that you have to stand in the midst of chaos. As we see what is going on in our society right now overseas, we must come into the understanding that it is not just physical, it's spiritual. And because it's spiritual, you're going to go through things. You're going to be at war. There's going to be a fight for you to achieve and press into and receive the things in which you are seeking to achieve. There's a passage in the Bible that talks about Gideon. He was actually one of the most scared people in the Bible, because it speaks about how he was found in the wine press threshing wheat, because he couldn't thresh the wheat out in public because something was going on at the time. So the Lord knew he could use him because of the fact that he was still determined enough to keep going, even if he had to press in silence. A woman goes into labor, but as she goes into labor, she must go through that process alone within herself. Because we may get married, we may have our husbands, but guess what? In that moment, he can't do nothing for you but be at your side, because that is what you're kind of called to operate through. And you must walk through that. And it can be difficult. And you're travailing through that experience. And it's so funny. A lot of the people I've been listening to, or lending my ear to listening to on YouTube, have been talking about this is the season of press. This is the season of travail. This is the season of pushing out the thing in which we have been operating in and trying to get that thing done. The other day I talked about the story of the young woman, the deer who went out into the woods, and she was concerned about what was she going to do? How was she going to operate? How is she going to be able to give birth to this fawn? And the second that she finds her space to give birth to this fawn, you got a lion comes out over here, you got a hunter come out over here, you got the fire. There's a catching fire of the woods, and you don't know what in the world to do. What now? This is the point in time that when you're in the midst of your business coming together, all things are in order, it seems like everybody and their mama want to bring you a problem right now, and you are panicking internally. You're like, what now? This is when you have to make a decision. What is the fawn's decision? I mean, not the fawn, the deer's decision to give birth to her fawn. To actually sit still and give birth, no matter what's going on around her. And you know what? The situation takes care of itself. She sits there and begins to give birth to her fawn, and what happens is the hunter gets struck by I believe the hunter gets struck by lightning. The fire gets put out by a helicopter, and the lion is hit or knocked out by the bullet from the hunter just before. Because when he gets hit by the lightning, his gun goes off and shoots the lion. All situations surrounding her are taken care of, and she is able to birth the baby in which she set out to give birth to. Taking care of yourself in the midst of the pressure, even though you feel like, I just want this thing out of me. I just want this thing done. I just want this situation over with. You're in the midst of the contractions and you want the baby out of you. Yes, there's an easy way to get the baby out. You can declare you want a C-section, but understand that by making that decision, it's the easy way out. But the consequence of making that kind of decision is you're dealing with the aftermath of the gas pain and the lack of mobility for several weeks, having to deal with changing bandages and keeping the scar clean and discharge and all of these types of things. What does this look like in your business? This looks like, because you made a hasty move, how's the saying go? You made a long-term decision on a short-term thought or situation. You now have to suffer the consequence in the business where you are maybe you're getting too many orders and you can't fill them. Maybe you are dealing with the inability to be able to fulfill the way that you would normally be able to fulfill. Had you waited, you'd have been able to operate in the laxness and the rest of being able to get order by order. But now you've gone and you've done something ahead of time, and now things are operating out of order. I heard a great story from T.D. Jakes in his book. I forget which book it was, but he was talking about this woman who had this great cake business. Everybody loved her cakes, but she had the opportunity to increase her sales, and she put the cakes out prematurely. And when she did, she got an order for like 180 cakes, and she just couldn't fulfill them because it was too much at one time, and it actually hindered her business because she could not fulfill the supply for the demand that was on her. Having to deal with changing the bandages, meaning you're having to babysit this thing because you move too fast, and you have to put your hands in everything because you're moving and operating within your own strength in order to get this thing done, when maybe had you waited, you might have been able to situate the thing under a system or collaborative effort, and somebody would have been able to help you. And you're dealing with discharge now. You're dealing with things leaking, little things like not being done, meaning you got everything else in order, but there's these little foxes, little fires that you have to put out because of the fact that you didn't do it in the order and the timing in which you were supposed to, because you rushed ahead of the thing before it was meant to come out because you weren't willing to travail. Now you're suffering the consequence on the back end. If a blessing is meant to have, if you end up having liquid stitches or something like that, or staples that fall out over time, often you have to go back and have the doctors remove it, meaning you have to go forth and get some assistance, or go back to the original source in which you went to in order to rush the thing in the first place, because you couldn't maintain or handle it. It doesn't work that way. If you're coming out, you have to sit and wait, even if it doesn't feel good and you don't like the pressure, it is what needs to be done. And you must remain sharp because you're going to get to the other side. I'm going to take a pause and speak about this because it was spoken about yesterday morning, that we are in a season where we are parting the Red Sea. And when you think of the parting of the Red Sea, it was a point in which the children had to leave Israel and Egypt in order to get to the promised land, but they had to go through the parting of the Red Sea. That isn't a place or a space that feels comfortable because you're going through a passageway that you've never gone through before, and it's uncomfortable, and you feel the enemy coming at your back, reminding you of what you lost. I have a situation like that happening to me right now that I know that the Lord's going to take care of. But let's look at it from this perspective. There's this passage in the Bible that talks about a young man named Moses. Moses, when he was born, his mother knew at the time that there was an edict put out right around the time that she gave birth to her son, that any children under the age of 2 that were boys were to be killed. She had to go through the process of, when this edict was put out, what was she going to do with her child? She loved her child. How does she protect that child that she has given birth to? She has to go through a mental anguish of making a decision to put her child away. She puts the child in a basket made of tar and leaves and sends it up the river. The best example I can give to you right now is anybody that's ever seen the Beyonce video where you see her take the child and put it on the water. You see her dressed in old garb, and then you see her on the other side where she is in a white dress, and she comes and picks up the baby from the water. It's just a good example for anybody that needs to be able to see. But when you look at these kinds of things, this woman had given birth to her child, and she knew she had to give it up. She put the child on the water and she did not know what was going to happen to it. You can only imagine as a mother that she was sitting there thinking to herself, oh my God, what in the world is going to happen to my child? There could be beasts, there could be water creatures, there could be all these things that could attack this basket and sniff this baby out, and the child may get eaten if it does not get saved. And she has to think these processes through. But see, the way that the Lord works and the way circumstances work, sometimes we are going through a lot of traumas and trials in our lives that we are like, I want this thing done because you can see that the outcome of this thing could actually bring forth a financial blessing to you, and you want to rush through it. I've been through this multiple times, and I've noticed every time I felt this way, the Lord never made sure that the thing that I was trying to get done got done in the time frame I wanted it done, because I was doing it in my own works. And because I was trying to do it in my own works, it never worked out. Because the Lord was trying to show me, wait, I'm going to take care of you in that area. This thing needs to be done specifically the way that it needs to get done. So what ends up happening is so the woman, she gives the baby up, but the baby is found by another young woman on the opposite side, much like that video clip, that on the other side of the situation that you find the baby is picked up, taken by this young woman back to her father's house. When we do things in the order in which they need to be done, sometimes the blessing comes and is favored to you. There's a scripture in the Bible that goes that the Lord will use the wealth of the wicked to bless the hands of the just. She didn't know what she was going to do with her child. She put the child on the water on a whim because she trusted the Lord to take care of that baby. Comes to find out, the young woman that took the baby out of the water was the daughter of the man that this woman worked for. So the next morning, she gets a weird call from one of the assistants that also works in the palace that she works for. She's walking in the door, distraught over her child. And the woman is telling her, come, they want you. It's like, they want me for what? Because it's like, well, the daughter needs you to nurse this child because you're the only one that is giving off milk right now. To her surprise, that when she gets to where they take her, the Pharaoh is standing there with his daughter, and the daughter said, I need you to be the nursemaid for this child that I found because I'm taking it as my own, only to see that when the child is placed in her bosom, it is her child. The Lord has a way. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about Nehemiah and the building of the wall, that where the wall is being built, and they fought for this wall to not be built. There was so much being done against this thing being built. But then when God took over the situation, not only did they have to allow the wall be built, that every resource was given to them by their very own enemies. There's another scripture that states that, hold on, it's on the tip of my tongue, that basically it's escaping me. That, the Lord will make your enemies your footstools. The very people that are supposed to be your enemies, he will use those people to bless you. For it says in Proverbs 6:31, the enemy got caught stealing and had to pay back sevenfold, even from his own house. Meaning the Lord will turn a situation around in your favor. A situation may look hard. It may look horrible. You may be stuck in the wait. You may be pressing, and things do not look like they would make sense for this thing to come to pass. But guess what? It's going to come to pass. As long as you press in and you keep going, even when it feels like you are against all odds, there is resistance coming at you left, right, and sideways, and you don't know how you're going to see this thing through to the end. Stand still and wait, because sometimes the blessing that's coming to you is going to solve not only all of your problems, it's going to abolish every situation that you were concerned about. Because the enemy only comes to bring threats in order to wash you out. But know this, that God will situate that scenario, that all things will work together for your greater good, and that the blessing will come in the midst of the chaos in which you thought was going to happen was solved by itself. Press. You've went through this much to get to where it is that you wanted to go. You prayed, You've pressed, you've stood, you've built this business, you've developed everything, things are going well. Yes, it's stressful. Yes, it's tiring. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, sometimes it feels like you're going to have to wait and wait and wait and wait. And the things that you think should be happening aren't happening. But guess what? The best thing that you can do, and this is the way I operate. If I get an idea, I do it, I prepare it, I set it up, even if it just sits there. Because you know what? Know this, that it's going to solve itself. As long as you press in, you're going to come into alignment with the thing that you're supposed to come in alignment with. It may take time, but you will get there. It's when we stray and we try to find our own answers and we take it into our own hands and we use logic to make these things fall into place. Sometimes you may get an idea and the direction may seem. I literally had this happen to me a couple weeks ago. It was something I wrote a long time ago. I was feeling in my spirit I needed to go back and read. And I'm like, that? You want me to read that? Why? When I tell you I've been reading it for the past couple of weeks, and I lie to you not, everything that I thought that I didn't need to read in that story has come back to me right in timing, day to day. And I'm like, what? Things I was concerned about, I'm like, what? It was there. The answer. Sometimes you have already gotten the answer. You just don't know where it is. And sometimes it takes wisdom to listen and pay attention and listen to that still small voice in you that says, go read that. You remember that thing? Go look at that. You remember that video? Go watch that. You remember that movie? Go pay attention to that. I lie to you not. I watched movies recently and gotten revelation as to what I was having a problem with that I couldn't get the answer to. The download came to me. God will use your enemies to bless you, and he will sometimes set you amongst and position you with the very people that tried to kill you or tried to kill that thing that you tried to build. He will position you, and sometimes he will put their hands in it because they want it. They will end up wanting it. They're like, man, we'll do this for you. We will pay you this much. We will do anything to make sure that we help you with this thing. But be cautious of that. If you don't feel in your spirit that that's the direction that you need to go, I don't care how much money they're throwing at you. Perfect example. Years ago, I was listening, actually it was last year, I was listening to Alicia Keys' book, and she had the opportunity. It was right after she left, was it BMG? She was transitioning out of her first label into the label that started her. She had just gotten with Clive Davis, and she had opportunity that either she could stay with Clive, who was starting a brand new label all over, or she could stay with the company that L.A. Reid was in charge of, and L.A. Reid's company was throwing all this money at her. It's like, do this. We'd love to keep you. And she's in the midst of her album project. She's trying to get this thing going with Prince and all this type of stuff for that one track to be done. And they coming at her left, right, and sideways. They're like, please come stay with our company. We'll give you all of this money. And it's like, the money looked good, but the opportunity to start fresh with somebody that has respect for you and will grow you from the seedling that you are. Money is nice, but what's behind that money? Sometimes, if you have somebody that has the clout to protect you, keep that person. Keep the person that is going to run batter for you, because you have that person in your back pocket nobody really knows that you're covered by that person, that person will protect you, will make sure you can get in and out of places. They will be your eyes and ears in daylight because they got the clout, but they will favor you. Favor is your friend. This woman had this baby, and it was put into the hands of the Pharaoh's daughter, which was favoring that child, because the Pharaoh himself was going to love that child as if it was his own. The very child that would later on come back to free the slaves. You never know why you're going through the fight you're going through, because that very position is going to be the same position that will turn around and free the people that God has set you forth to free. You may never know why. You may never understand it. That business that you had toiled over for 5, 6, 7 years trying to figure out, wanting to get rid of, that's the thing that's going to be the answer and the door for somebody else. For it says in the word, all the world groaneth and wait for the manifestation of the sons of man. This thing that you may have in your hand may be the very thing, the song that you wrote, may be the anthem for a movement, the business you're creating, may be the resource for people that do not have the resources in countries that you do not understand, may need it. The second that you put it out, the book that you've written may be the encouragement that they need to hear at this particular point in time. What is it? And know that the wait was not in vain, for when you put it out, it will speak. For it says in the word in Habakkuk 2, and I'm not sure whether it's 7 or what have you. Though it may tarry, wait for it. It shall surely speak. Wait. I know the pressure is hard. I know it may not make sense, but the reason that you're waiting is you may not see the answer, because the answer is on the other side. But when you cross over to the other side, the ease that will come because you waited and you positioned yourself in the wait of that thing, that all the ease will come out of it. I remember I was watching a movie. I think it was called Apple Mortgage Cake. Young woman needed a mortgage paid for her house because she'd had that house in her family name for years, and they were coming after her for the mortgage. She had always known how to cook cakes, and it was her favorite grandmother's recipe. People always said they loved that cake. She decided that she was desperate enough that she was going to start selling this cake. She started selling this cake, and she's like, I just need to sell 100 of these cakes and I'll be able to pay the mortgage. Well, she started selling the cakes, and she got down to the last 30 cakes, and people started to come alongside her and be like, well, there are actually people that want more cakes. There was an order that came in for 150 cakes. There was another order that came in for 550 cakes. There's another order that came in for 600 cakes. She was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And she went on, and when the cakes started to take off, she went on the news because a gentleman that was interested in her said, we're going to help you with these cakes. And she had all these cakes, but then the mortgage people were like, well, if you're cooking them in the house, there's an issue with the house in this order, so we have to shut you down from being able to cook the cakes. And she was like, oh God. So the guy went and found her another location, in a motel, to finish making the order batches for the cakes that he needed to ship out most recently. And she worked all night trying to get them cakes put out for that next batch of orders. And she still had another set of orders that came through, but it's the woman that she had been assisting the whole time throughout the entire movie to get this job. We never knew what job this woman was trying to get, but she used to take her time out. She didn't have to help this woman do job applications and job training presentations for interviews, the whole film. And the woman comes back to her and said, I got the job. And she was like, oh, great, wonderful. And she said, but no, you don't understand. It's with a company that deals with the type of service and supply that you need for these cakes. I told them about you, and he had seen the interview you were on. He said, look, He wants me to call him right now so you can talk to him. She was like, what? Picked up the phone, called the guy. The guy said to her, look, thank you for calling me because I wanted to tell you that we will supply the rest of what you need to put these cakes out. Not only that, we want you to make a cake for spring, summer, fall, winter. We want you to design it. We want to know what it looks, what flavors you can come up with. We want more than that, just one cake. We want you seasonally. We want to pay you this amount of money for it. And she broke down into tears because she had fought. She thought she was just paying her mortgage, but she ended up getting an entire business that was going to be favored, and she didn't even have to supply it. Somebody else was going to do all the work for her. All she had to do is oversee the process because she knew how to bake the cakes. Don't you ever not wait for the answer. It may feel like you may never get it done, but in the moment that it looks like it's worse, you will suddenly receive a God moment that you know was only God that answered that question, that provided you the answer that you needed for that thing to be birthed, and you don't even have to put your hands on it no more. The assistance you need, the help you need, and the ability that you need, that you will be able to get the rest that you need to get. Perfect example for the woman that has 1, 2, 3, and 4 kids that I was talking about. If they birth 3 or 4 kids at one time, they're going to get that nanny. They're going to get the assistance. They're going to get those family members that are going to help them. And they're going to get a spouse that's going to be like, look, rest. I know you feel like you need to be up and taking care of these babies, but we got it. Sleep, rest, take time for yourself, because if you heal, then you are better help to everybody. When you are preparing to give birth to the thing that you are called to give birth to, that's what happens. Because if you went through the travail, the other side is gold. So this was the last part of this series. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I have an idea. I'm going to set up to do the idea that I think I want to do with it. And then I'm going to leave it be. And I'm going to pray on it. But that's what I wanted to tell you guys. I hope that this entire series blessed you. If you don't know, look for, what do we call it? The Are You Pregnant with Purpose series. All 18 parts are there. I hope this blessed you. Until next time, much love, faith, peace, and blessings to you. Bye-bye.